Hello, viewers, and welcome to our E3 2019 video podcast. We had the preview a couple of weeks ago. Now we've got the review of the event to talk about, focusing predominantly on racing games. We may have a separate podcast focusing on other stuff. But first, today, I'm joined by Kevin.
Hello.
And Kevin,
Yes,
we're going
sir.
to be discussing the new racing games today, kicking off with WRC 8. So I guess I've been covering a lot of the stuff from a video perspective. But what are your thoughts on WRC 8 at E3 this year?
Yeah, I mean, it's shaping up nicely. We've seen preview footage before, which we covered, it was about 2 or 3 months ago or so. And it just seems to be evolving from that sort of process. So we've seen more of the dynamic weather in action and some of the environments, and it's all looking pretty lush, isn't it, so far?
Yeah, I mean, it's coming along. There's still a lot of work being done on it. It's still very much an in-development game at this stage. I mean, here we are. I guess that build was sort of May, and they've got sort of a couple of months to really bring it all together. And there's a lot going on in there, and there's still a lot yet to be shown. I think we were expecting more to be shown at E3 than we did get shown. I was expecting to learn more about the career mode. I know a lot of work's going into the career mode, and it's looking very exciting. And I was expecting that to be ready to be shown and to learn all about that. And it hasn't. So we've predominantly focused a lot of content this year on the just the rally courses themselves, general driving, and of course controller play. General driving, they're improving the physics all the time. It's looking good, and we're going to come back to that in a separate video review of WRC 8, but they're improving a lot of that. Controller handling has been improved immensely from the previous versions, and you'll see that in the controller video. I was able to control all 3 cars. I mean, don't get me wrong, it's tough game. I mean, it is tough. You're not going to jump straight into a WRC car and do clean runs. It's going to require a lot of practice. There's also a lot of options in the game we haven't investigated yet. There is a sea of options, and we're going to probably produce a separate video for that. So WRC 8 was probably the most exciting game at the show in terms of racing gaming that was there, in terms of what we want to see. It's bringing lots of elements together, and let's just hope they get it right. And we're going to talk about all the pros and cons and ups and downs of it in a separate video at the moment. But either way, it's looking good. There's still stuff to work on, and I'll say in this short stage that I think, like a lot of people, we hope they do something about the co-driver. And I hope they do something about. They're not going to do anything in this game, but the audio, it's passable, but it's not genre defining. There's still a lot of work to be done on that audio, but it's passable. There are sections that are very good, and there are sections that, and there are cars that don't have the grunt. They're a bit whiny. So
I think probably next generation we'll see a lot of these racing games with massive improvements to audio.
Yeah,
I think it's just maybe it's just. I mean, we're pushing the visuals this generation, but in terms of sound, we're not seeing a massive leap up in general this generation. Games like GT Sport, for example, still hasn't got that decent sound in place. So I think next generation, I think that's something we can really look forward to, massive improvements in terms of audio all round. But I think we're going to see a lot more on WRC 8 at Gamescom, aren't we?
Yeah, big reveals to come. There's a lot to see in that game. I know that we're sort of focusing on what was on the E3 demo to an extent. And, we've got more controller gameplay to come. We've got some GoPro footage to come. We've got a deep dive into the options which are going to come. And then really from Gamescom, we're close to launch then. We'll get the final game thereabouts around Gamescom, and then there'll be a sea of coverage, full rallies, dynamic weather rallies, everything you can think of coming to the channel. So if you're keen on WRC, the good news is, I mean, it's great, when we get some access, we can produce some really good videos, and it's given us an opportunity to do that, especially with a good replay mode as well. So WRC 8 didn't let us down at the show. It didn't show us everything we thought we were going to see, everything we'd like to have seen, but it didn't let us down. It's looking really good, and it's still looking very positive, all things considered. Next game, of course, didn't get much on it, was Grid. And we are looking forward to seeing more Grid, but all we got from Grid was some Brands Hatch footage.
Yes.
I thought there might be a little bit more playable at the show. I thought we might see some different types of cars or a completely different discipline from what we saw in the earlier sort of
they're
trailers. trailer
They're
videos.
close to chest still, aren't they? They're not sort of giving us the full reveal, the new sort of image of Grid. We haven't really seen it yet because we're seeing tracks that have been in the old game. But they've come out and said it's a new Grid title in the sense that it's not a reimagining of the old or the original Race Driver Grid. So we're not seeing enough new still, even after E3. So yeah, it's a little bit disappointing, I think, what they showed.
Yeah, I was expecting to see a new discipline,
Yeah.
that was going to excite us in some way, and it wasn't really. It was just one car and one, 2 cars on one track. But I suppose in a way, it's out in September, so it's not far off like WRC.
Yeah.
And I think that Grid, we're probably going to see an explosion of content in the next few weeks, because again, they've got to reveal a lot in July, and then Gamescom, that's going to be huge for Grid as well. So there's a lot coming in terms of Grid content.
Yes.
And
I guess perhaps because of the launch of F1 2019, it's taken up a lot of their resources.
Yeah, that's the focus, isn't it? I mean, that is the focus, F1. There's no doubt about it. They want to get that out of the way. Also, Grid's coming to Nintendo Switch, Grid Autosport in July. So I guess that's also going to be a focus of building the brand. And then really seeing what the final game's got in terms of cars, circuits, content, how those locations are used, what kinds of challenges there's going to be, what are the online modes, what's the career mode like. There's a lot that we need to discover about it, and see how it all comes together. But potential, there's always lots of potential with Grid. I've always enjoyed Grid games, as I say, and I hope it gets the following, because I'd like to play Grid more often. But it needs to have the following there, and when I made Grid videos before, how much I enjoyed it, it just didn't generate the views. And if it doesn't generate the views, you stop making videos on that game. It's as simple as that, really. So I hope it does do well. I hope it does generate a following, and I hope it's a good game. That's the top and bottom of it. If it's not a good game, then it will probably drop without trace, and that'll be it. But we'll see. It's got good pedigree, good heritage, and it just needs to be the right package. And we'll see what happens in the future there. So that's Grid. Not much to say about that, really. Then it was on to Formula One. Again, nothing from the show floor on Formula One. We didn't really hear much about it from a show. I don't know if it was being shown like Grid just behind closed doors for Codemasters this year. We were expecting a big sort of blowout on the career mode again. A real complete career mode experience and a career mode trailer. None of that happened. And it's strange because the game's coming out next week, and we haven't seen any of that yet. So we did get some footage sent over to us of the Formula 2, bit of an incident. There was no information backing that for me when it turned up. I just received the video clips, and it's like, right, clearly it's some kind of challenge mode. This happens to you in the race when you start. You already start down, and you've got to catch up and win the race in some way. So it's some kind of challenge mode there, but it shows off the cinematics and the commentary, stuff like that, and of course the dialogue between the various rival racers and stuff like that, which was quite entertaining as well. I was hoping that. Well, I'm hoping that the
Formula 2 content can evolve into a full season. Much like when we saw the classic cars reintroduced. Was it 2016? Had these challenge modes for the classic cars. So hopefully this they can fully flesh out the Formula 2 into a proper championship, with giving players a chance then to run a full championship in F2 and then move up to F1. Because that's what I originally assumed this was going to be, but then it came to my attention that it wasn't full championship at all. It was just like a few races or a few little game modes. So it starts off like that, I guess, and then perhaps in the future they can evolve it into a full championship. That's what I'm hoping it will go in the future, because they're great little cars, aren't they? They're very different to the F1 counterparts. They offer very different experiences, so it'd just be nice to see it evolve into a full season. Yeah, I agree. I didn't know when I first heard about the inclusion of Formula 2 that it was so limited when we first were playing it, so I had no idea. But then I suppose they can have Formula 2 leagues online, so you can run 4 leagues online with your friends and all that kind of stuff. And I think that's where they're sort of building that new audience there. And certainly the cars look and sound the part. Yeah.
challenging to drive as well, very different to the F1 cars. So that's going to be interesting, I think, seeing how that comes together. There's a lot of pressure on Formula One to succeed with F1 esports developing. You can see the investments improving all the time. They're putting into it. The scale of the game is increasing. The visuals are improving. And I think they're on a good sort of pattern now in terms of the journey, in terms of where they're going with the development. So, for example, you know that the USP in a year or two will be we're going to have the full Formula 2 season and all that sort of stuff in there. But I think in the short term, it's really got to be about stability. It's about making that online system as rock solid and as stable as possible for the league racing and making sure that it works well. League gamers are very vociferous when there are issues.
Yeah.
But they do only represent a very, 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 very small part of the people who actually buy the game. And I know to them, in their little world, it's like, we are everything. You are the noisiest people on Twitter, and you've got tons of Twitter followers. But the reality is, in the scheme of things, most people are never going to do a single lap without crashing off, ever, in any race, without all assists turned on. They'll still crash off.
Yeah, the developers got to sort out the fundamentals.
Yeah.
Getting around to the sort of frilly bits, like you say, it might not be frilly to you, it might be everything to you, but because you make up such a small portion, obviously you have to delegate your resources to more important things,
that's
scheme of things.
That's right. I mean, let's talk about VR for a second. People talk about VR in various games. I meet the game developers of all these games, and we talk about VR. We all love VR. They love VR. I love VR. They love VR. When you guys are unhappy and you're listening to this and you're thinking no VR, no buy, and you think, yeah, but the problem is when a game's being converted to Nintendo Switch, PlayStation, Xbox, PC, they say, right, what are we going to do, guys? Shall we make VR compatible for the PC, or shall we convert the game to Nintendo Switch or something else? The problem is, you're talking about, we can't run it on PSVR, it's not powerful enough. Xbox doesn't have VR. So you're talking about a very small percentage of the PC market that do have VR.
Yeah.
And when you look at that overall, it's nothing. It's
doesn't make sense.
1% share of the people who buy the game. Yeah, it's just nothing. It's not even that. It's probably like 0.2% of people who buy a game will ever use VR with it. So though those of us who use VR know VR is awesome, and it adds to it, and there's nothing as good as that in terms of experience, you can't, for games companies,
they can't justify it, can they?
No. And that's the problem.
That's just a business, isn't it?
Yeah.
You have to think about numbers, and numbers are not there, and there's not a lot you can do about it at the moment.
No, but I do believe that when we get to PlayStation 5, when games can accurately be run on VR, so when you can run the entirety of Formula One in PlayStation VR with 20 cars on track in wet weather conditions, when you can run the same amount of cars on track in wet weather on Gran Turismo Sport and everything else, suddenly
becomes viable, doesn't it?
Suddenly you'll find a VR headset becomes available, compatible with Xbox. PSVR will increase in performance and tons more people will buy it. And then suddenly you're going to see way more VR games. It's just ahead of its time right now.
Exactly, yeah. And VR owners right now are very much sort of riding the curve, aren't they? They're very much part of the future, but they're ahead of the future at the moment. So we've got a massive influx to come for sure. And next generation, I think, is key for the development of VR. It's bringing VR to the masses. That's right. The key aspect. Right. And if the PlayStation can come out with a wireless headset that's not going to cost so much, as well as have the the original VR headset backwards compatible as well. It's just introducing more numbers. I mean, I think they've sold over 4 million, haven't they, PSVR? So
I don't have the exact numbers, but yeah, it is selling, and there is a market out there for it, and they are keeping it going. And as I say, I think once they change to the new system, every year that we wait for the new system is a year that it gets 2% more powerful. And or whatever it is, a few percentage every year go on there, and that means that the performance you're going to have in VR is that much better, that much more potential. So, I know a lot of you
to those who wait, isn't it? It's a case
and it's going to be incredible. I mean, I hope that we get 2K VR, but with high detail, high anti-aliasing, high detail. And I think if they can get that right, then really work with that resolution, or if they can have a 4K headset that puts out some sort of checkerboard image that's high resolution in some way, something like that, to improve the resolution, it would work. But the technology's improved. I mean, there's the new Oculus Rift was released recently, the new version. I forget what it's called now offhand, but that was released recently, and that's improved. I watched a bit of Gamer Muscles video actually when he was testing it out, and it's good to see. I think he could see the corner from like just around 100 yards, and now he can see it perfectly from 150 yards. So that's really important, that extra bit of distance, detail to see into the distance. And I think that's going to improve a lot in terms of visual inputs and details for the future. So we're getting there. We're about halfway there. We just need to improve a bit more, because a lot of people I know have used VR and say it's nice, but it's all pixelated and the picture's not that good, and it's not good enough yet. So potential, guys. So highlights then, definitely WRC, bit of grid, bit of Formula One, and of course with the Formula One we also looked at the car models, and we had the TV ad, and the various other details and options in there as well. What else did we have? We had Circuit Superstars. Tell us a bit about that, Kevin.
Yes, this was originally Apex Racing League, wasn't it? Going back quite a while ago, and all things sort of went quiet on the game, and then it comes out that they've got this rebranding of the title, and it's going to be coming out in 2020, which is unusual, isn't it? Because an indie game such as this, you don't often see an indie game announced like a year before release, because games like this, you want to announce, you want to get them out pretty quickly, because people will forget about these games, just from the very nature that they're indie and they don't have massive marketing budgets. But they've had a good opportunity to showcase the game at E3 at the Square Enix conference, so it was a nice platform to actually bring this to people's attention. It's just a shame that the release date is next year rather than, say, a few months away. So I have to be patient for this one, but it does look like a lot of fun. There's a lot of detail in the car models and the pit lane models and such, so it has lots of quirkiness about it. So it's a game that's really sort of overdue to the market. Top-down racer, real sort of retro flavour, but also bringing up to modern day standards in terms of the car handling, which has a sort of semi-realistic base. So it's going to be interesting to play a game like this.
Yeah, I suppose when I looked at it, I just kind of thought of kind of almost an overhead grid, the way the cars slide into corners. And there's lots of details. Love the pit crews.
Yeah.
Lots of little things like that work really well. It's good that they've got a publisher behind them now, so they know they can invest their time and effort properly, and it's going to get out there. And it's nice that they had a good platform to work on as well and to promote it. So nice little game. I think it makes a nice little change, and who knows, this could be the sort of mini Rocket League racer that many fans want, that's slightly different to the other sort of serious world of racing. We do like our top-down racing games, and of course Mantis Sperm Racing sort of pushed that.
I love that game. Yeah,
Mantis Sperm was great. It just needed more content though.
More tracks, more environments. It only had like 2, didn't it? And they introduced 1 for DLC. But this game certainly has a lot of love put into it, doesn't it? There's a lot of attention to detail. It does. Just stands out as a premium product amongst sort of similar games of its sort of sub.
Maybe we'll see Mantis Burn 2 next year.
Oh, I do hope so. Yeah, I do hope so.
Now, let's moving on. We an announcement, not at E3, but an announcement during the E3 show was also Isle of Man TT2 is coming next year. We should mention this actually. This was a big announcement, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was sort of casually put out there, wasn't it?
Yeah, just tweet it. By the way, guys, Isle of Man TT2 is coming next year. Oh my God, what? Right in the middle of E3, wasn't it? Right in the middle of the conferences or something.
Sort of blink and you'll miss it sort of thing, wasn't it? A tweet by Big Ben Games. Just a one screenshot, so there's nothing really to show us, so no trailer, nothing new. So it's just to let us know that amongst all the sort of gaming reveals and that, they just thought they'd throw in the fact that TT2 is alive and it is coming to PC and consoles next year. Yeah,
so that's coming. That's going to be, I say it's going to be, it's potentially could be ace, because everybody knows they've got a great model of the Isle of Man TT course.
Mm-hmm.
So who knows what they're going to do? But if the developers do two things, one, they work on the other courses to bring them up to the same standard. Two, they completely redo the bike physics to get them just right. I liked the responsiveness of the bike in Isle of Man TT. I thought the responsiveness and the direction of travel was great. As we all know, there are other traction issues that affected it, and those invisible bumps. Anyway, so, my goodness, do they need to improve the sidecars?
Yes,
They were terrible.
They were very, very. Yeah, they were.
I just couldn't drive with them. Do you know what? I don't get this. I don't like it. I don't get it.
Yeah.
Move on. So, new bike handling.
I'd like to see a rally car on that.
Get a
crossover. WRC crossover is what we want to see. Get a junior WRC car on there, front wheel drive. We can rev the nuts off it, and
you know what? Unfortunately, I think that's never going to happen. But it would be nice. The reason why it never happened is simply because it's a license, and the problem with official licenses are that you can only ever use the vehicles that attach to that license. And in this case, it's the super bikes and the super sport bikes.
Which are tough.
It's like Formula One. Formula One was you can't use GP2, but now it's become Formula 2. They finally allowed them to after 10 years of making Formula One games. So maybe in 10 years we'll get our rally car. But you're right. It would be great.
Different licenses. There are sort of, I guess, different flexibilities within those licenses, depending on the license holder, the governing body, I guess. So I guess some give more leeway than others, don't they?
Yeah, and I think that it's about building a relationship and about the games, the motorsport companies recognizing what a game needs, and let's hope they can do that. But I will be taking a lot of feedback that I have and that I've noticed from comments, and I'll be sending that to Big Ben to say, please work on those bits. This is what the community want. Because I want the community to have a great Isle of Man TT game next year. There's so much passion for it at the developers. There's so much passion for it from the viewers. And sometimes when people are passionate about a game, it comes out almost as negativity. They get very angry. Yeah. But really what they really want is they want a good Isle of Man TT game. And we all want that.
Well, in a strange way, the angry gamers are the most passionate.
Yeah.
Because like you say, they have a vision of the potential of the game and they want it to live up to that potential. So that's right. But as long as you can voice your opinions, but as long as you're not abusive, you've got to give developers and publishers a bit of respect. But by all means, voice your opinions on what you'd like to see in the future, because they do read every comment.
They do, and it's nice to make positive comments. I always say that to people in the comments. A lot of the time, I think there is this way in society these days where people think you have to be angry all the time and speak to people in an angry way to people. No, just make your comments known. And I often say, what do you mean specifically? I say to people quite often when they say a comment, don't just say this game is rubbish. Say what's specifically wrong with it. How can they improve it? Why would it be better? What was your experience of something that was better? Let's develop something here, and developers read that and they'll work on that. If you see something in WRC you don't like, co-driver, audio, then let's talk to developers about that. If there's something you want to see in there, perhaps some form of damage, some form of tire wear, I don't know what it is, but if there's something, mention it, and then that's something can be looked at. And I know the resources on all these developers are always limited, but they do take things on board. I'll tell you, if there was a developer that doesn't, I'd say Forza Motorsport never took anything on board from me. Gran Turismo feel like they don't take anything on board either. So there are some developers that are so big that I never feel they take anything on board. But I find the mid-sized companies really do, and they're always watching all of this content, and they're probably even listening now. And I know how passionate they are about their developments. So Isle of Man TT2, not at E3, announced during E3. Epic news. Epic news. It just came from nowhere, didn't it? Which is quite funny.
We'll look forward to the first real sort of screenshots and trailers and such. But we have no details whatsoever on it, other than it's coming in 2020 for consoles and PC. Whether that means a Switch release, we don't know at this point either.
No, we don't know. It's a bit of all a mystery to us. Now, what else was at the show here? Overpass was actually at the show. I'm just going to mention this very briefly. We've got some footage coming in of Overpass. It won't be edited and put together probably until late next week now. So yeah, I don't know, around sort of the 25th of June, something like that. You guys might see a nice preview on it. And I've had a quick look. I'm liking what I've seen so far. It's a very much a physics-based racing game, so it's more of a if you've ever played Spin Tires or Mud Runner, imagine a high-speed version of that, where you're in a ATV buggy driving up rocks and mud. And I found that I was coming to an obstacle, and I'd be slow to the obstacle, and then I'd give it a squirt on the acceleration, and that would raise the front wheels a bit, which would help me get on something. Then the vehicle would get beached, so I'd have to kind of be turning the steering wheel side to side to try and rock the car a bit to get a bit of traction here and there. And lots of that. There's lots of moving the wheel and moving it around and bumping around. And it looks like it could be a lot of fun from a technical driving perspective, but it's a very early version. So we're just looking through that now, and that'll be up next week. That's Overpass. Nothing more to say on it. Elsewhere at the show, of course, the reveal at the press conference of Forza Horizon 4 Lego Speed Champions. Now, this was a surprise. We talked beforehand. We said, what's it going to be? We've heard that there may not be a Forza game. We heard that it could be Forza Motorsport. You know, we'd say it was time for Forza Motorsport 8. We knew a Forza Horizon 4 add-on had to come at some point. Then we saw this announcement, and I had two feelings in my mind at the Microsoft press conference. And one was, that's it. There's nothing else to show. You've literally got no new driving games for a serious gamer. For the next 18 months, there's nothing. So that'll be 2.5 years where Microsoft won't have released a serious racing game. You know, was it 3.5? 3.5 years by then. So
Yeah.
that's 3.5 years with nothing. You know, that's a long time. I was kind of expecting two Forza Horizon 4 announcements. One being Lego, and I thought if they'd said, and we've also got the Rally add-on, the Rally Serious Driving add-on, and that way there'd have been something for everybody to say, wow, the Lego is amazing, but also, wow, this serious, or whatever they want to do, track racing, anything, something that fills the void of Forza Motorsport, why there's no Forza Motorsport. And it could have even been Forza Horizon 4 Motorsport World Park, you know, and in this park we've got all these great Forza Motorsport tracks in the park which you can race around on. Yeah, something like that. And I think that would have been nice, you know, Forza World.
Yeah.
Just to keep the gamers, you know, going.
Yeah, it kind of builds the hype, though, doesn't it? The long sort of absence of Forza Motorsport. I think it could be a very good thing for the series. I think they need to really come back strong, Motorsport, with you know, an awesome launch title for the next Xbox. Because I just feel that it's getting a bit stale. The 2-year cycle, it just, I don't know. I mean, even if a Gran Turismo came out every 2 years, it would get stale, wouldn't it?
Yeah,
it loses that premium.
We said that, didn't we? It's too often. I mean, once every. I think the problem though is that you do need something for the racing gamers every year now. It's just the way people are geared up for it, and I feel that this is where it'd be nice if they had a Project Gotham Racing, because wouldn't it be nice to have had a new PGR game announced?
Yeah.
You know, in that way you have PGR, Forza Motorsport, Forza Horizon. PGR, yeah, exactly.
PGR.
I don't think you can ever have too much PGR in your life. I mean, Project Gotham Racing 1, 2, and 3 and 4. Well, 1 to 3 in particular for me. Okay. The technology was ahead of its time.
It was, yeah.
I mean, the games still look incredible even today. And you think, what would Forza PGR have looked like today with that kind of tech? I mean, wow, it's been blowing our minds. And it's such a shame it's not around anymore. So, yeah, that's Forza Horizon 4. And apologies if there's just pictures in this. I don't know if we're going to have any footage of it or not. So that's it. But I will say this. The Lego pack is wonderfully put together, very thoughtfully done. And I do look forward to having a proper go at some point, and that way just seeing what else I can do, and if I can build a Lego house, that will be nice. So that's Forza Horizon 4 Lego. Elsewhere at the show, nothing on Crash Bandicoot. We haven't had any info on Crash Bandicoot. We've not even received review copies, sadly. So no review content coming on Crash Bandicoot, which is a bit of a bummer. And truck racing. We've got a truck racing video that will be up by the time you hear this chat, but obviously it's not up yet at the time of recording. And that's a couple of races, the European truck racing, which also has some of the world truck racing content in there as well. I'm enjoying it so far. Good fun. That's a separate video. Do watch that. Check that out. And we'll have some detailed content. Kevin will be making an overview in a few weeks for you on the complete game once we get it on console. And I'll be producing some additional videos and looking at doing some online races nearer to launch as well, just to see how it comes together. Love the audio in it. I think it's got a really great feeling being in a truck. I think it in terms of starting a new franchise, I think it's a good start. They've got some good foundations in here, but there's a lot to build on in terms of the future to really build it up. And I think there's real potential there. Elsewhere, there was a new racetrack revealed for Pacer.
Yep.
Which looks very nice indeed. Pacer certainly has got the visuals. It's very polished in terms of its visuals, but how will it handle? And at the moment, I'd say the only thing that's going to prevent it being a classic in many ways is the fact that the handling still needs a fair bit of work. And that's certainly the version I played at EGX. The handling still doesn't capture the Wipeout vibe that it seeks to. It looks like Wipeout, it sounds like Wipeout, it smells like Wipeout, but it's not Wipeout.
It's not Wipeout.
And that's the problem, at the moment. So, but either way, what a lovely circuit.
Does look gorgeous, doesn't it?
Does look gorgeous.
That name, though, has it grown on you at all?
No, it still hasn't. Formula Fusion was a way better name.
Yeah.
That name does nothing
agreed.
for me. Nothing for me.
I guess anything with formula in the title is sort of running the risk, isn't it?
I don't know. Who knows? But Formula Fusion worked really well because the whole idea of Wipeout was Formula One of the future. That's what it was meant to be, an actual Formula One of the future, when they first had the concept 20 odd years ago. Goodness, what was it now? 93, I guess they started developing it, putting it all together. 94, they had all the realizations. 94. And then it launched in 95. My goodness me, 25 years. Anyway, that's Wipeout and Pacer and my memory bank. Yep. Elsewhere, we had a new trailer revealed for Rise. Rise. I read it completely wrong.
Rice. No, rice is something you eat.
It is.
Yeah. It's an off-road racer that's sort of fast-paced, futuristic. It's got some weather here as well. So I haven't seen this game for a while. That's why I'm making mistakes here, because it's sort of evolved so much now. Originally, they showed off futuristic tracks that were very smooth, and here you see like the opposite, very rugged off-road tracks, different environments, different weather conditions, snow, wind, rain, and it's just a nice little windy title for the Switch, isn't it? Just to give another sort of different experience in the racing genre. The Switch does have a lot of racing games these days, doesn't it?
Yeah, I mean, it's coming along nicely. Rise, Race the Future. There we are. Yeah. That's the one. Coming to Nintendo Switch there. So that's your thoughts on that, Kevin. I think that it's looking good on the Switch. You've got Crash Team Racing, you've got Rise, you've got Grid. You've got Redout, which hopefully we'll have video on soon. You've got Isle of Man TT, WRC. Wow, what a handheld system for racing games. I mean, how many of them are any good? That's the question. How many of them can it really handle? I find that developers these days, you see, for me, my favourite thing. What is my favourite thing?
Frame rate.
Exactly. It's all about the frame rate. And what I don't understand is why developers feel the need to push so much lighting and everything else when they could just reduce the detail and run high frame rate games that look so much more polished.
Yeah.
When we've had games running at 60 frames per second like for 25 plus years. PS1 could have racing games at 60 frames. PS2 did. This is, I don't know how powerful Switch is in comparison to, say, a PS3. It's somewhere between it must be somewhere close to a PS3 in terms of performance.
Yeah.
So
I guess it comes back to what we were saying earlier, though. Most people, they want visuals, and frame rate would be seen as the sort of very niche market. Even though it's essential to racing game, in our opinions, I guess that the wider audience would see the graphics, and the graphics are the number one selling point.
Yeah, do you know what? I disagree with developers who say that. I say it all the time. I say no. I say, you know what? Yeah. Look at the frame rate on Mario Kart.
Yeah.
Look at the frame rate on Gran Turismo. Look at the frame rate on Formula One or Dirt or Forza. What is it? It's 60 frames. It was 60 frames on this gen. It was 60 frames on the last gen. It's if you look at Project Gotham Racing 1, it was 60 frames per second.
Was it really?
It was on the Xbox One. So there's been lots of 60 frames per second titles out there for a long time, and I think with a system like this, 60 frames helps with the playability of the games. Jerky movement affects you dreadfully, and I think so many of these people are just not gamers. They just say, oh, that lighting makes it look better in a screenshot, and that's all they're looking at. They don't care about anything else. And
given the sacrifices they have to make to get it running on the Switch, they're probably not in a position to make so much more sacrifices in terms of visual elements to incorporate that 60 frame rate, so I can understand from their point of view, but also I can understand from your point of view, Alan, as well. So it's always going to be a sort of tug of war, isn't it, trying to get frame rate over graphics. Hopefully next gen they will have both. That's the key, isn't it? 4K 60 is what we want.
Yeah, well, next gen, hopefully that's the goal. And as far as main graphics are concerned, 4K 60, being able to run with rain and weather conditions in racing games with all
amazing.
That, with multiple vehicles.
I believe it's going to happen, Not yet, but we'll see.
Certainly the potential is definitely there, but it all depends on the performance. No one's talking real performance from the flops. We need as many flops as we can get.
Flops are good.
And flops are good. So I think if we can get it together, and these games developers really do find their feet with it, I think we can see some stunning content in the next gen. We're seeing it gradually improving all the time on this gen, and I think that we're in a good place in the step up to the future. So racing games coming to Switch is looking good, and I'll probably just show some random grid content while I'm actually talking, because we don't have any footage of all that. And other than that, I think that's about the key things from the show, Kevin. There was a lot of no-shows.
Yes.
I'm just going to go through the no-shows for a second. No GTR 3, so knock that on the head. Monster Jam Steel Titans, we're going to have some coverage on that next week. I don't have any Monster Jam Steel Titans footage yet, but next week we'll have some of that. No Wreckfest. No Crash Team Racing footage for us. No truck driver footage came through. And nothing new on Google Stadia for us. No Need for Speed. No NASCAR Heat 4.
I'm a little bit worried about GTR 3 at the moment, because the silence is sort of deafening at the moment, isn't it?
Yeah. Well, it's gone very quiet on that, though apparently it was announced way too soon. So there is that. There is one game I'm looking forward to, is the Apex game. I'm going to see if I can find it while I talk.
Racing Apex, is it?
Racing Apex, yes.
Yeah.
I'm really looking forward to seeing how that comes together.
So there was two games pretty similar to each other, weren't there? There's one announced a long time ago, I can't remember.
90s arcade racer.
That's the one. Yeah.
Yeah, that vanished without a trace.
Into a new name. It was GT something or something GT, and even that went all quiet as well. So that doesn't look good. But the other one, Racing Apex, is it?
Yeah, Racing Apex. Racing Apex.
Looks awesome.
Looks awesome. And the good thing about it is it doesn't date, because it's already dated. So it doesn't matter whether they released it in 5 years from now.
Exactly.
It would still look as fresh as it did in its dated form a few years ago.
About the personality of a game like that, isn't it? Like you say, it just doesn't date, does it? It just doesn't.
Bags of personality.
Yeah.
Oh, I'd love to see that. Do you know, when we talk about HD remakes, I often think, and I'm going to show you guys some Racing Apex footage while we're talking, I'd love, like for me, I'd love to see an HD remake of the Ridge Racer series.
Yeah,
I'd love to see it brought back, full HD remake.
I was thinking about Ridge Racer,
remaster.
actually. I've been playing Ridge Racer 7 recently.
Mm.
It just hasn't been a Ridge Racer this generation.
No.
The last one was Unbounded. I think that was 20.
Which wasn't a proper Ridge Racer game anyway.
No, it wasn't. No, so the proper one was, last one was Ridge Racer 7, I believe. Which is so many years old now, and we just haven't had anything since. And,
in a way, Ridge Racer changed after Ridge 5. Ridge 5 for me was the last proper Ridge Racer game. After that, it all came, even Ridge Racer 6. I played Ridge Racer 6 to death when the Xbox 360 was released.
Yeah.
And I completed the whole web of things to do on it.
And the whole lot.
Oh, everything. Every single event in the game I completed. And it wasn't a proper Ridge Racer game, because they went into its Nitro stuff and all that, and that's not Ridge Racer to me. But Ridge Racer 5 in particular is my game that it's just so special. When I got my PS2, I imported it from Japan for a reasonable amount of money. It's Ridge Racer 5. I drove 33,000 miles on that, just on that game. So I did quite a bit of driving on Ridge Racer 5, but I didn't use the fastest cars. I was all about using this sort of slower, grippier car, but absolutely maximizing the car. I loved it. I thought it was brilliant. And I still think about that game. You know, just the music, the vibe. There's a great vibe to that game. Such a cool world they created.
Of that game, I didn't like the direction they had with 6 and 7. It was very kind of dull. Almost reminds me of Rage Racer, that sort of grey palette they had. It's they went the early Ridge titles, like 1 and 2.
Well, they went with this very flat world. The roads are very flat. Everything was very flat and, you know, lacking in roundness and detail and life. They're very lifeless games.
Exactly.
And I think that was the real problem there. So, I think that, you know, I'd love to see a new Ridge Racer, but again, do Namco even know how to make a Ridge Racer game anymore? I mean, ordinarily I'd say no, but I was amazed at what an incredible job they did on Ace Combat. So, they who knows? They've got Ace Combat guys there. Maybe the Ridge Racer guys have been in a back room somewhere and they can dig them out. I'm happy to help. Not that I'll ever ask for my help, but I'm happy to give them my years of data on Ridge Racer to help them steer it in the right direction. But these game companies know it all clearly, so we'll see what they come up with. And other than that, I think that about covers it. Let's talk a bit about what we thought of the racing games at E3 this year. This year's E3 has been a great disappointment. Above all, I think that E3 is going through a changing period. No Sony, EA having a separate show. It started off with the separate conferences. It started off with EA having their own separate event, and since then it's breaking up, and E3 is not what it was. We were sitting here trying to get news out of E3, and quite frankly, it's been a needle in a haystack trying to get news out this year. It's been, I mean, people are saying, wow, you're the only guys with this or that. I tell you, what's happened to all the news? What was everybody doing over there? Normally videos are up in 2 seconds. So it's a strange E3 show. And we're going to talk a bit more about the other games and the conferences a bit more in a separate podcast, which is going to be talking more about E3 generally. But overall, I think we're turning a corner. I think E3 might not exist in 5 years from now. I think if Sony aren't there next year, I can see E3 going. It's going the same way as a show called ECTS went years ago. and which was a UK show, just like E3. It was amazing in the late 90s, early 2000. And then what happened is they charged too much for the stands.
Mhm.
And then games companies said, right, that's it.
Yeah.
Sony had their own separate show one year. And then after that, Sony even said, it cost us like £4 million at the time, ridiculous amount of money to have this show, which at that time was an incredible amount for a show.
Mm.
And
And
they just didn't do it anymore. Yeah, they just
break
not worth
away slowly,
Yeah.
surely. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think that you could end up with a lot of publishers saying, you know what, we'll have a conference, something like online. We can do something online, and then we can digitally give all the journalists access to everything because they can send you codes, and then have a big show at Gamescom where it's cheaper and everything's better organized for them. So I think that's something that we could see in the future. But yeah, what are your thoughts on E3, Kevin?
Yeah, like you said, it was very underwhelming, wasn't it? There wasn't a lot of gameplay shown at the conferences. In terms of racing games, there wasn't a massive amount new that was that exciting. So I guess it's hopefully the calm before the storm, which will be next E3, new gen consoles, showcasing the technology, what games are we going to get for launch. They're going to have to show all these games off. So I'm hoping that this is just the sort of calm before the storm, and that Sony do take part next year, and it will be a massive celebration in terms of gearing us all up for next gen. Of course, whether we'll get a solid lineup launch for these next generation consoles, who knows? Traditionally, you don't really get a good lineup, but I feel that maybe this could be one of the strongest ones because of the fact that the games have been quite few and far between in the last 2 or 3 years. Sony have shown off the same games for the last 2 or 3 years. So it's almost like they're really sort of breaking away from the current gen for some time now to really focus on next gen and really push that sort of launch games lineup to, because they're obviously going head to head with Xbox again. It's very important not only who can get out first and the pricing, but also what sort of strength of the initial lineup of games is going to be. That's going to be key, I think, to get one or the other off to a great start. So hopefully we'll have a strong lineup of games from the off. Hopefully at 4K 60, but we'll have to wait and see for that one. But I'm very much looking forward to next year. I kind of had a feeling that this year was going to be a bit of a damp squib, but I didn't quite expect it to be this depressing almost. It was very disappointing on the whole. So yeah, just sort of looking forward to next year now. We've sort of got this over and done with, and now it's all about next gen.
Yeah. I mean, this show was a poor show in the way games were shown off. I mean, and I'll mention this in the other E3 chat, but just like lots of pre-rendered trailers. Here, look, here's Gears of War 5. Look, it's a pre-rendered trailer. Look, lovely, and that's it. Didn't show you any gameplay, nothing of games that are coming out in the next 3 months. It was a weird show, a lot of stuff not being shown. What were we all afraid of all of a sudden? Why are we afraid to show the actual games? A lot of strangeness.
Opportunity, wasn't it, to really sort of stick it to Sony, and we didn't see anything that really dropped our jaws. So it's unfortunate, really, but I guess it's just all about next gen now. We've exhausted the current gen. The switchover has been made for a few years now in terms of train efforts on this upcoming gen. So yeah, we're just sort of seeing the same old titles again. I guess a little bit more detail, perhaps in a couple of them, but we're still waiting patiently for these games to come out, and whether they'll have cross generation compatibility as well is interesting to see, because it'd be nice to see some of these old games actually, I say old games, the upcoming games for current gen actually introduced for the next gen as well, really sort of spruced up, really making the most of the hardware, just so you can see the difference between the two. I think they can do that. They can have a sort of cross-generational thing going on with the bigger title.
Yeah, I think it's certainly going to be an interesting time. I think there's going to be a lot of interesting stats being mentioned in polygons and what it can do and everything else, whatever, in the next year or so. And
SSDs are coming, baby.
SSD, no loading times.
Well, the good thing, no loading times, but how big are these SSDs going to be? It's no good if you can only get 8 to 10 titles on one, So you're going to have a separate HDD drive.
Yeah, There'll be a separate HD drive.
Fly them across or something.
That's it. Some sort of power loading system.
Future, right? Can't wait for that.
Giant RAM in a way, because like the original PlayStation 1, when you got Ridge Racer in, it loaded the entirety of Ridge Racer onto the RAM. You could take your disc out if you wanted to, put your own music in, and that's kind of what it is. It's like a giant RAM system that just keeps it going. So when you've got open environments, you've got environments that change, it's all in there. It can do it all, and I think that's where it will help a lot with the various physics and the weather conditions and stuff like that. So I think from a game developer's point of view,
it's very exciting in terms of having more on screen, more going on, more calculations, more of everything simultaneously without having to take a performance hit or a visual hit or whatever. So in that respect, it's incredibly exciting from the developer's point of view, but it's translating that to the player, isn't it? They need to really, for next E3, they're going to have to really showcase that technology in terms of what it can process on screen at any one time. That's when we get really excited when we see things like that.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to seeing proper gameplay and what we're going to be playing next gen. What's it going to mean for us? But that's it from now. For now, thanks for your time, Kevin. And that's it for now, viewers. Do let us know in the comments your thoughts and feelings on E3. Do let us know what you've thought of the coverage on the channel, what you would like to see, what you haven't seen. What were you looking forward to that didn't show? Do like and subscribe to the channel. It supports what we do, so really appreciate that. And keep your eyes peeled for plenty more content. This is our E3 sort of roundup, but it's not the end of our E3 coverage. There'll still be some bits and pieces of E3 content coming up in dribs and drabs over the next week or so. So there's still quite a bit still to do, including a look at Overpass, and perhaps there'll be a bit more footage coming on WRC, and we'll see what else